Hey guys, this is Carrie with the Welty Environmental Center, and I'm here at Newark Road Prairie State Natural Area today to talk about groundwater. Groundwater, as the name suggests, is water that is held underground in below the surface bodies of water called aquifers. So Newark Road Prairie specifically is what's known as a wet mesic prairie. The word mesic means moderately saturated with water, and it's called that because although you can't see it, there is tons of groundwater in this prairie. So I'm just going to turn you around real quick to show you one of the most important tools that hydrogeologists use when studying the groundwater at this prairie. So you may or may not have noticed this as I was talking before, but if you see that white pipe sticking out of the ground there, that is what's known as a groundwater monitoring well. Groundwater monitoring wells are used by hydrogeologists to gauge the height of the groundwater at any given point. These are important tools because, as I said before, we can't see groundwater because it's underground. So this is one of the ways that humans can gain a sense of how high the groundwater is at any given point. So now we're going to talk more about groundwater, what it is and how it functions. Then we're going to do a craft where we actually create our own monitoring well to see how they work. Let's get started. These are the different underground zones there are when we're talking about groundwater. The unsaturated zone and the saturated zone, or the aquifer. The unsaturated zone has no water in it, whereas the saturated zone still has soil, but there is water all in between the particles. It's where all the groundwater lives. And the point at which the unsaturated zone becomes the saturated zone is known as the water table. The way plants and trees or anything that's growing from the ground gets most of its water is from growing roots down below the water table into the saturated zone. As we pan along here, you'll also see our groundwater monitoring well, kind of like the ones we were looking at Newark Road Prairie. This is how hydrologists find where the water table is, because it changes as water evaporates and is added by rain. As we pan along further, you'll also see that surface water, such as lakes, rivers, and streams, are just exposures of groundwater. It's because there is a depression in the land, and it's deep enough that groundwater is able to rush in because it falls beneath the water table. Remember, water tables are always changing. If it rains, the water table rises, and if it doesn't rain for a while, the water table falls. This is why, if you're studying an aquifer, you need a monitoring well to know where the water table is falling at any given point. Now that we better understand how groundwater works and what a water table is, let's do a craft where you'll build your own monitoring well, and you'll be able to see how groundwater functions in the real world. For this activity, you'll need a clear container, tape, scissors, a straw, a ruler, and some sand. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my straw and my scissors, and I'm going to cut vertically all the way up the straw. As you can see here. And the next thing I'm going to do is just make another vertical cut along the straw to cut out just a section of it. Then, once I have cut that strip out of the straw, I'm just going to go in here and make little slits going up the other side of the straw, like this. So little slits or holes. Then I'm going to take my clear container and I'm going to match the side of the straw that we cut the strip out of on the side of the container, like this. But I'm gonna put the bottom part of the straw a little bit higher up off of the bottom of the container. And then I'm going to take my tape and making sure I try not to cover all of my holes, I'm gonna tape the straw to the inside of the container, like this. Then I am going to take my sand and I'm gonna fill up my container. As you can see now, I've got sand all in my container, but I can still see my little straw monitoring well. So then the last step is to take a little bit of water and just slowly pour it in, just a little bit at a time, and wait to see what happens. Okay, so I have let our water settle out a little bit, and it looks like this is roughly where our water table is falling. So we've got the water below in the aquifer, we've got the water table, and then we've got our whole zone where there is not saturation. So if you want to be a real hydrologist about this experiment, what else you can do is you can take your ruler and you can measure how far from the surface your water table is falling. So mine's at about 4 centimeters right now because I added a little bit more water. You can keep track of these measurements over time as water evaporates from the sand and the water table falls. What else you can do is you can dig your finger into the surface like I've done here and just see if you hit water at roughly the point where your water table is. So it's hard to see in there, but there is a little bit of water down at the bottom of that hole, and it matches up pretty well with where our monitoring well is saying the water table is. Thank you guys so much for coming along with me today to discover groundwater. I hope you have a lot of fun doing the craft at home, and I'll see you next time.